Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our cyber security webinar. Thank you very much for taking the time out to join us today. We're going to try and keep it fairly short and sweet. Today's webinar is aimed really at sort of end user and trying to give you a little bit of education about a few do's and don'ts around sort of cyber security. My name's Steve Marks. I'm a sales manager at ACUTEC, and on the call as well with myself is Irfan, our technical manager.
Hi everyone.
And also Amy, who puts all the hard work in putting these together as well.
Hello.
So what we're going to do, to be honest, we're going to kick straight off and try and give you an insight and show you exactly how easy it is to what we call spoofing an email, which basically is a way of replicating or pretending you're somebody else. So Irfan's going to jump straight into a demo, and then we'll talk to you about a few do's and don'ts and a few things to be cautious of.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. So just to reiterate what Steve's just mentioned, what I'm going to do is show you how easy it is to spoof, or as Steve's just described, pretend to be somebody else. Now, this can be someone within your own organization. So it could be one colleague pretending to be somebody else and emailing someone within your organization. It could be one of somebody pretending to be one of your suppliers, someone pretending to be one of your clients, or it could just be, some people might do this for fun and pretend to be Barack Obama, Mickey Mouse, or whoever. But I just want to show you how easy it is to actually pretend to be somebody else and send an email. A lot of people ask me, do you have to know what the dark web is? Do you need to have lots of tools? And I said, no, it's really easy, and I'm going to show you how easy it is. Everyone knows this page is Google.
I will just add, just before we start, that we are in quite a secure environment, so you can try this at home if you want to, but we've obviously made sure we're quite secure, as some of these sites can cause you problems as well, so just be a bit careful if you do want to try this out.
Thanks for putting that in, Steve, and actually I don't recommend you do try this. If you the sites we might be visiting now could actually have malicious software embedded in them. We're in something called a demilitarized zone, which is a secure area on our network. What we're going to do is actually go on a website that might not be safe. So please, if you try this, do not do it on your work network, and if you do it at home, you're doing it at your own risk. So all I'm going to do is put in something easy: spoofing email website. Could I just ask everyone to drop themselves onto mute as well, please? I can't spell. And as you can see, it's just a simple email search. A web search, and the website I'm actually looking for is the top natural search result. I'm going to click on it, and as you can see, it's just a basic form. And what this form allows me to do is send an email pretending to be anybody I want. Now, I'm a big Tom Jones fan, so I'm going to use Tom Jones, and I'm going to pretend to be him. And I loved him on The Voice, and I'm a bit disappointed he's no longer on there. So it's Tom Jones, no longer at thevoice.co.uk. Again, that could be any email address or any person I choose. The person I'm going to send an email to is a demo domain we have called Winston and Daniels, and I'm going to send it to someone called Helen Daniels. And the subject I'm going to choose is please complete the following form, or you could actually put click on the following link, or please review the attachment. So you can actually choose to open attach a file if you want it. Now, I've just prepared some text, so it'd be something like, "Hi Helen, could you please click on this link below? Kind regards, Tom." And again, you can put whatever you want. Now, these dodgy websites, even they want to make sure I'm not a robot. So all I need to do is click on this, and it's saying select everything that's got trees in it. So prove I'm not a robot. There we go. It's going to verify me. I'm not a robot, and I'm going to send that email from Tom Jones. Okay. Now, if we switch over to Helen's email inbox, there is a previous email from Tom Jones I've got there, just in case. You know what technology is like. Just in case this one doesn't come through. But what will normally happen is the email will come through, and you'll see an email like this just from the person you've pretended to be, and there will be a simple link, there'll be a simple attachment that you can click on, and that will take you to potentially a malicious website. So a quick double check in here. Okay, let me just try that again. So, well, as always, it's technology letting me down on the last minute. Let me just try that again. It's Tom Jones from to Helen, and again, it can be to a legitimate website, but from any website. Please complete the form, and I have attached a. We're looking for all the water, so I'm just going to click on all the water, and then we're going to verify. So I'm not a robot, and let's try sending that again. Okay. So the email would normally come through into Helen's inbox, and it would show up as you can see the email address there, Tom Jones at No Longer the Voice. I could have pretend to be anyone from within ACUTEC. I could be a supplier or a client, and what would normally happen is that you would click on that link or click on that attachment, and potentially it would lead you to an infection of some sort. What I'd now like to do is go on and highlight some of the further issues that might occur.
Okay, so what happens really with these type of things now? We're finding that this is the most common way of people trying to access your data or encrypt your data. Now, what we're trying to get across today, there are 7 steps or 7 essential steps for cybersecurity, which we'll go over. We are going to be focusing pretty much on the last 2, which is really the end user, because as much as we can all sit there and think actually we're very safe, we're very secure because our organisation or our company makes sure that our network is secure, unfortunately the end user is where we fall down or where we get risks. They're the easiest people to target. So do you want to just explain a little bit, Irfan, about the key fundamentals of the 7 steps, and then we'll go on to the end user stuff afterwards.
Yeah, okay. So I don't want to talk too much about the technology, because that's not what this session's about. This is really designed for end users rather than IT managers and so on. But if there are any IT managers, which I know there are on the webinar, this is information you can take back and help educate your end users as well. So for everybody on the call, I'm not going to be technical at all. I'm just going to explain this in layman's terms. So I'll start with our checklist, and I'll start with the firewall. So think of a firewall as your perimeter, so your fence, your front doors, your big gate on your buildings that stops all the bad guys getting in. I regularly call the firewall the bouncers at the door. Now, if you've got that device, then give yourself a tick mark. This is the first point of defense. It stops anybody getting onto your network. Again, it's not foolproof. It can be bypassed with some very intelligent pieces of software, but really this is a first stop. You wouldn't be without a gate or a front door on your building. That's why you shouldn't be without a firewall. If it gets through the firewall, it will then arrive at your PC or your server. Now, the next piece of defense we use is antivirus. That will sit on your PC or on your server, and if the virus reaches that point, hopefully the antivirus will stop it and quarantine it. Now, another method of bringing malicious software or viruses into a network is via email. And a way to stop those dodgy emails coming through is to have an effective anti-spam solution. So if you have a firewall, give yourself a check mark, antivirus check mark, and anti-spam check. Now, the next one's interesting. You don't naturally think of it as a solution to help you protect your network, but it's a must. Think of it like servicing your car or MOT. Your software may be operating systems like Windows 7, 8, 10, may be Office, may be Adobe, have vulnerabilities in them, holes in them that are patched once the vendor, like Microsoft or Adobe, find out there's a problem. Now, they normally find out because a virus has penetrated this application or software, and they are able to fix how that virus got in via a patch. Now, these patches are released regularly, and you need someone like ACUTEC or your IT partner to make sure they're on top of the patch management, making sure they actually keep those loopholes closed. So it's important to make sure that happens. Now, the next one is probably one of the most important. If the virus gets through and the attack gets through the firewall, the antivirus, the anti-spam, and it's not been patched because it hasn't been identified yet, and this happens daily, then it's the worst case scenario. You've had the attack, it's infected your systems, and the only real way out of this is to recover from a backup or your disaster recovery solution. So it's important you have a copy of your data, and preferably your entire system, somewhere off-site. So if the worst case happens, we can go and get that copy and reinstall it back on your servers or on your PCs. Now, the two important pieces of information that we want to discuss today is having a simple IT policy, it's company-wide, and educating the end users. Now, I'm sure if I'd ask you to do one thing today, it is to go back into your offices and look for one piece of information called your IT policy. It might be included in your company handbook, and I'd ask you to try and have a read. And a lot of you probably, including myself, I find it difficult to understand IT policies. They're that complex and they're written by lawyers normally. I would ask every employer on this call, or if you're an employee, to speak to your employer to try and simplify that IT policy and make it clear and concise, so your end users can understand it, and therefore if they understand it, they can start following it. It's like terms and conditions. A lot of people don't read them because they're not clear and they're too long-winded, and they just ignore them. If the employer empowers the end user to have a simple IT policy to follow, for example, do not visit these type of sites, do not click on links that are not relevant to you, do not keep your password in a apparent place, then these should be actually included in your IT policy and clear to understand. Finally, it's end user education. The case used to be where technology was the risk and hackable, but now it's actually the people.
And I think it's really important, the end user education, because there's so many things which Irfan will probably go on to shortly. If you receive an email from somebody you don't really know, or it's not to do with your department, there's no reason for you to click onto that email. If you receive an email about a delivery and you don't work anything to do with deliveries, why would you click on that email? If you're not sure, send it to somebody like ourselves who can look at this. And the key thing is the weakest point in the network are the people. Unfortunately, the technology can be as high spec or expensive as you like, but if the user or the end user says to the system, please click on this link, and it follows that, that's where you can get caught out. And there are a lot of things now which we're starting to see a big increase in. That's in social media and the way that you will get targeted. Yeah. Do you want to explain a little bit about social engineering?
Yeah, of course. So I just want to pick up on a point that you've mentioned. So hackable people. This is a term we like to use. Before, firewalls were hackable, PCs and software. That is still the case. But what criminals have realized, cyber criminals have realized, it's easier to hack a person than it is to hack the technology. And what I mean by hacking a person, it's good old conning someone. It's getting your confidence. It is easier for somebody to walk through the front door because you've opened it than it is for them to break through or pick the lock. And that's exactly what cyber criminals are now doing. They are trying to fool the end users into opening the doors by clicking on links, by opening attachments, or following instructions, or filling out forms that actually are ways of getting into your system and are not real forms and are not real links and are not real attachments that they profess to be. Now, social engineering is something used to use a new technique called spear phishing. Now, phishing is a term used by the industry to say, can someone be caught out? So what used to happen was a large net would be cast. far and wide to see who could be caught with a little bit of bait, and that bait might be, please click on this link and you'll get a free Amazon voucher. It might be Tesco are doing a special offer, or it might be actually a piece of software like Gmail or Hotmail, someone pretending to be a link saying please reset your password. It might be PayPal, that's another one. Spear phishing is more advanced. Now, I did a quick search because I've got the names attending this webinar, and more than 60% of people attending this webinar, I was able to do a very quick search via your name and find out a little bit about you. So that might be on Facebook, it might be on Twitter, it might be on LinkedIn, and on a lot of people it was just their name, and some people it was their name plus their job and the company they worked for. If you've got any PR, for example, you're a director and you have some PR on your website or via Black Country Chambers, Birmingham Chambers, then that appears in Google searches. And that's how intelligent cyber criminals are becoming. They are finding out that this person, they might use Companies House to find this information out, is the finance director, and they might find out that this person's the managing director, and they might even find out that this person's in accounts payable. And what they're doing is pretending, spoofing an email from the finance director to accounts payable to say, please make this payment, it's quite urgent, and I need it done within the next hour. And there are occasions where we've seen that happen and those actions being carried out. We've actually seen very intelligent cases where someone's a new starter within an organization who isn't quite familiar with the process, and so the criminals have found out that this person has recently joined and they've been targeted to make a payment. So it's very, very sophisticated, and what they're using is social media to engineer a situation. They'll find out from your LinkedIn, from your Facebook, or from your Twitter, and please don't think I'm saying don't use those platforms. They're very useful for business, but please be aware there is information about you and your job out there that could be manipulated and used against you. So that's called social engineering, and they're hacking the person using to gain your confidence. They're trying to get through the front door and infect your systems.
I suppose from here is, what the key is, what happens next. If they do manage to get through, you do manage to get onto your system, what is the next stage? Well, the next thing is really what's going to happen to your systems if they do manage to hack it.
Yeah, that is the big question, and I think a lot of people sometimes, maybe on this call or maybe on this webinar, but I often hear, well, we're only a small firm, or we're quite a large firm, but we don't have very important intellectual property, we don't have expensive designs, and we don't hold a lot of money, so people aren't going to actually come after us. Well, the times have changed. There is something very valuable in your business, and that's your data to you. Now, if someone was able to stop you using your own systems, that would be of quite a valuable thing, and that's what is happening. It's called a denial of service attack. Instead of taking something from you and trying to sell it to somebody else, what they're doing is denying you your own service, and that service might be an application like Sage you're using, it might be your entire computer systems and your networks. And what they do is they will infect your systems with something called encryption software, and this encrypts all your data so it can't be accessed unless you have a special key. And then they will put a ransom on your screen saying, here's the key, you can have this key in exchange for €300 or $300, or it might be a couple of bitcoins, which is cryptocurrency that can't be traced. And what they'll do is say you have 48 hours to pay for this key, or your data will be encrypted for good and you won't be able to retrieve it.
And we have seen a few cases where people have made payments to the criminals, and once they've made a payment of 300, they then ask for another 300 and another 300. Not always. Some cases they are releasing the data, but at the end of the day, we're dealing with criminals here. We just don't know what they are going to ask for next.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's been, for larger organisations, some very big claims, but what they tend to do is keep it small because it's quite profitable. It's probably going to cost an organisation more than €300 to call in an IT company to clean this up. So they keep it low so they can. It's a numbers game for them. If you just pay €300, they'll move on to the next one, and in 6 months they'll try you again because they know you're willing to pay. Now, there actually has been a case where the criminals weren't very clever and they encrypted the networks, but the key they had got corrupted and it didn't work. So even though the ransom was paid, they handed over the key, but the key didn't work because they weren't very good at what they did. So these are scenarios that have happened in real life. Now, Amy has put a link, and I think Amy will...
Yeah, well, Amy will send the link out to everybody after anyway, so you can download the playbook. On the playbook, there are a few more tips and tricks about sort of cyber threats. But we're going a bit further now. I mean, as we said at the start, really, it's the end user are the targets here, not so much the network. So I suppose you want to just go over a few things of silly things that we forget about and the passwords and things like that.
Yeah, and this is a key thing.
And how we get caught out.
Protecting your passwords is very important, and not having weak passwords is very important. If you've got a password similar to the ones you can see on the screen there, or any variation of them, you have an insecure password and you are a vulnerability to your employer. It's really important that you try and think of a secure password. Now, we all know and hate passwords, and especially the complex ones, because they're hard to remember. But what I would suggest is you find a phrase maybe, or your favorite line in a song, because that's slightly longer, so that makes it secure, rather than just a very short password with just letters or just numbers. I would ask you to mix it up and put other characters in. Now, this is really important because a weak password is very easily hackable. We're talking with the correct piece of software, less than an hour to do an 8-character password that's only got letters or numbers. So it's really important that you do protect your network and your employer by having a secure password. Now, here's something really important. You can see one of the pictures there with someone just stuck their password on the screen. Now, this is a big no-no. Sharing your password with your colleagues, you might think it's okay, but if anything happens on your system while you're logged in, it will be that end user that is held accountable for that virus or that attack. Now, we have had people open emails that have nothing to do with accounts or running the business when the email came from Company's House, or supposedly came from Company's House. Now, if you have nothing to do with Company's House and you open a Company's House email and you infect the network, then ultimately you're responsible. And if you've shared your password with somebody and that person is using your PC or logged in as you, then it's still you as the end user that will most likely be held accountable. And again, I've had it where people do not work in deliveries, are not expecting the delivery, and they've decided to open an email that was from FedEx, supposedly, or from UPS, or from Royal Mail.
And I think the other thing just to remember here as well is, criminals aren't stupid. If you've got one password for one application, it's likely you're going to have a very similar password for other applications. So as much as we're trying to protect the business network here, you've also got to consider your own applications, such as your eBay, your bank accounts, and things like that. You should have multiple passwords. You should use special characters, and it should be a good mixture of upper, lowercase, and numbers.
And I'm sorry if this sounds like the real basics, but it's the real basics that get missed that cause these problems. Now, there's another picture there, and I don't know if you recognize the person in it. It's actually Mark Zuckerberg, and he's the founder of Facebook, one of the most popular and profitable, valuable companies in the world, and they're a leading technology company. Now, Mark Zuckerberg is afraid of being hacked, and as you can see on that picture, he has put a piece of tape over his webcam and a piece of tape over the speaker and mic on his laptop, because he knows even Facebook can get hacked, and he does not want people snooping via the microphone or via the webcam. Now, if Mark Zuckerberg is afraid, I think all of us have to be cautious, and overly cautious is not a bad thing. So I'm going to say it once again. Please think of a secure password and do not share it with your colleagues, and do not stick it to the desk or the screen at any point. Now, there is one other way to bring in viruses into your network. That is via a CD or a USB. So if you have been working on something at home, or you decided to bring in some pictures to show people, or just a video or some music and you've put it on a USB, that is a prime way to bring an infection into your work network, because you might be infected at home, and you copy that into your actual work network. What we'd recommend is, if you ever need to bring a USB in, you can call in your IT partner like ACUTEC, and we can do a scan of the device. Or if you're an employer and you're listening to this, we can actually block all the USBs on PCs so no one can upload anything or upload anything into the network.
Okay, and I suppose just really before we finish up, if there are any questions, please just type them in the chat box and we'll answer those towards the end. But the key things really we're trying to get us across today are just be vigilant. You know, if an email's coming from somebody you don't normally receive it from, why would you click on the link? If you're not sure, just send it to us. We're happy to have a look at that. You know, it's help@acutec.co.uk. I think any type of emails that, you know, may seem slightly out of context, pick up the phone. You know, there's no harm in questioning somebody why they're asking you to do something you might not normally do. You know, we would always just be that little bit vigilant, and you just need to think of the risks of what are involved. You know, if you do get caught out, there's the loss of data, there's, you know, loss of orders, you know, loss of money really. So there's so many different things you can get caught out with here.
Can I just tell a quick story about a company that came to us after they'd had an attack? And what had happened was, the criminals had got into the system, and all they'd done is a scrape of some data. So what they'd done is they got into Sage, and they scraped some data from Sage, and what they took was the company account number, your internal reference of the company. They took the last invoice amount and the next invoice amount, and what they then did was just a normal con. They took that data, they went onto the company's website, downloaded their logo, printed off some letters to all the clients in that list, and said, this was your last payment amount, invoice amount. This is your next invoice amount. This was our old account number. This is our new account number. Can you please make the next invoice into our new account? And they lost £20,000, and that was only a quarter of their customers complying with that request. A lot of their customers actually called in as a double check to see if they had changed their account. But just a quarter of people following a written notification meant that client lost £20,000. So it's really intelligent what's happening at the moment.
Yes. Okay. Well, wonderful. I hope everyone has picked up or learned a little bit from today. As we have said, Amy will email out the playbook at the end of this. I don't know if we've got any questions come through at all as yet.
I've been sent one directly from Sue, who has asked whether Apple devices can be hacked.
Okay, so that's a very good question. Now, iOS devices, so iPad and iPhones, are very secure. There hasn't been any substantial attacks that have penetrated those networks. But what you have to remember, in yesteryear, Windows devices were the most prominent, so a lot of criminals were focusing on Windows PCs because 95% of people had Windows PCs, and that's where the attacks were focused on. A lot of criminals now working on ways to try and hack iPhones and iPads, and it's the same with Macs. Even though those devices are more secure, attacks are less prevalent at the moment. There is a lot of work criminals are doing to try and penetrate those networks and fool people in. And only yesterday I read of another attack where you can get into iPhones, but when the device is plugged in to a PC. So please be vigilant. And if you have an Android device, there are numerous attacks happening on Android devices. And anything else, Amy?
Not that I can see, unless anyone wants a quick one. That's
yeah, some quick ones, please. Feel free to type them in. And just really, if there's anything you're not sure about, if you need a little bit of help, please don't hesitate to just give us a call. We'll probably follow all up with everybody who's been on the webinar today to see if there's anything else or anything further that you'd like to know. So we try and keep it quite low key for the end users. But yeah, if there's anything you're not sure about, please feel free to give myself a call, Irfan, or Amy, and we'll help you with that.
One final message I'd like to leave you with is, if at any point you think an email is suspicious, something might be spelt wrong, someone called you by a name that they don't. So if you're Sue, you normally call by Sue and someone calls you Susan, please just be cautious and think of every unusual email as a potential risk, and probably best to get it checked out first. There's no being overcautious at the moment with all the threats.
Okay. About it, yeah. Okay, well, wonderful. Thank you very much for taking the time out. And say, please feel free to give us a call if you do have any questions. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.